All right. Welcome all, one and all, to episode 182. This is a weird thing. I thought we were on 180 the last one we did. I went and counted, and I'm like, we're actually on 182. So today I thought we'd be 181. It's actually 182 of these episodes we've made.
We just liked 180 so much that we wanted to do it twice. So.
Yeah, but I mean, we're just creeping towards 200, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, so, we need to come up with some sort of
I think we should have your buddy,
200 celebration.
I think we should have your buddy back on who does writing.
I talked to him the other day, and he said, "Oh, it would just be an episode of me not having done what I said I was going to do." It's like, oh, that can be interesting.
Let's do it. Okay. So we talked before going live. We're going live late. I think this was definitely one of those days where both of us were probably tempted to just pass on it. But we got to do the art check. So we're going to do our check and then probably not have much of a topic. So if you're joining us and stuff like that, if there's anything you want us to touch on really quick, let us know in the chats. Otherwise, we're just going to slam through this. So, Cory, what'd you get done? Or am I going to see something shocking?
You are going to see something shocking. I know
low-hanging fruit, but
I don't know if I played the sound, but there is sound, which makes it really hard to actually talk at the same time. But I got this done, and yeah, so it just kind of loops through this series of animations. But that was fun, just kind of like a little thing that I was playing with. And then I also, so you can go check that out. Oh, it is still going. All right. Sorry. I'm just going to mute this tab. There we go. All right. That was just playing really loudly in my ears.
Wow.
But yeah, so I got this guy done. And then I started another one. Resurrected another one that I got like through the animatic stage on before. And so I'll be doing that. But I also met with a client today and got really far into a very complicated storyboard that I was working on all last week. And
Nice.
So got some good feedback on that. And got to the next milestone of the contract by doing that. So I get to bill again. And they were like asking me like, "Hey, when are you going to send us an invoice?" And I was like, "Oh, that would be now." And they're like, "Cool, we're ready for it." So that's good. And then that's pretty much it on the art front. How about you? What did you get done?
Well, I'm impressed, and I feel definitely overshadowed. So, but yeah, that's really cool, and that came out really good. And I think that'll be a nice illustration to show your students too when they're just chasing the cheese, just going for the A.
Yes, I'm actually going to use it tomorrow morning.
That's awesome. Okay, so let me throw this up there. So I just finished the type pencils for the last page, my graphic novel. So now pretty excited because all I have left to do is ink and then do the entire book design with some interior stuff and like possibly like an about page and start fishing for quotes, pull quotes and stuff. So yeah, so I'm kind of stoked.
That's awesome, man.
Mm-hmm. And it's been, we'll get into challenges and stuff. So
yeah.
All right. So what were your challenges that you faced whilst attempting to defeat the white whale of the animation?
Yeah. that animation was challenging in and of itself just because it was really easy and it took me forever. I mean, I think that was over a week. And it really shouldn't have taken me that long. The client thing was challenging because I'm under NDA, so I can't say too much, but it's in an industry that is very complicated and very regulated, and has a lot of different players in it. And each one of those stakeholders is a very complicated business in and of itself. And I'm doing a video that's like an explainer video on how they interact with each other. And so this is kind of one of the fun things about doing creative work is you get to learn a ton of stuff about things that nobody would normally talk to you about. But it's also really mentally challenging. So like I was just exhausted all last week because every night I was just cranking hard on that storyboard. And so it's kind of just carried over. Because I think I turned it in Monday or Tuesday night. I can't remember. Yeah, it was like last night. So anyway, yeah, it's just like that amount of thinking at that level is just challenging, more so than like, I'm going to make something move. It's like, okay, so am I going to do something illegal with this animation if I draw this storyboard this way? And you have to like look at how what the possible traps are that you might be opening for your client and saying things, and then trying to remember basically like months of discussions and like looking through notes of meetings to try to make sure that all of the things that are being communicated that you want to communicate are being communicated, and all the things that you don't want to communicate are being avoided. And so I'm being intentionally vague because I can't be public about it, but it's really, really mentally taxing.
Yeah, and from what you've told me about it, I suspect that would be so. So it's to me, I think it's always a challenge, but I agree that's also a really fun thing. A fun little byproduct is you gain all this really weird information.
Right.
I just when you were bringing that up, I was thinking of this time that I used to do a lot of art at a discounted rate for the disabled American veterans because it's just a really good organization. And at one point they had this cross promotion thing for t-shirts they were doing with Rich Franklin, who was like a UFC champion. And up until that, I've never been a guy who like watched fighting. I didn't even watch boxing because I don't particularly enjoy real violence. Like I have a real aversion to it. And then I just had to watch hours and hours of footage of this guy just bashing people's skulls in.
Right.
But what was interesting was just like kind of appreciating and learning some of the art of it just while doing that, like while having to watch like hours of UFC fights just to get really good shots of like, some flying moves that he was really well known for. And that actually made me, ever since then, I've been like, I still don't really watch UFC, but I have a total appreciation for it now because I'm like, okay, I actually had to learn a little bit about it. And that's an insane sport. Right. And who knew that would be a byproduct of it, so that's why that is definitely a fun thing. Yeah, for me, the biggest challenge is just that I had tendonitis on my leg, and it's finally the point where I can work out. At the last Artcheck, that was the first day I was able to actually do my workout. And I've been able to stay consistent with it, but it's still thrown off like my momentum a little bit because it's like when I'm walking, I'm a little slower and there's a little bit of pain throughout the day, and so that kind of sucks. But other than that, it's just balancing life stuff. Tomorrow I have band practice. On Friday we're going to see Built to Spill, which is one of my favorite bands, and I've never seen them live, so that should be cool. It's very poppy indie rock type stuff, but that should be fun. But that's like, once again, it's every little thing is just kind of eating away at time, and so it is one of those things of I'm glad I made that little like priority list that I talked about the last check, because that definitely has helped me kind of refocus and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing big.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to mention there's a client thing. My wife did a kid's book and they changed the format of the book, like the entire sizing, because the publisher they're going with like changed their sizing restrictions. And so the size that the whole thing was designed at had to be redone. So we've been modifying and redoing all the pages and layouts and stuff like that. And then there was a second iteration of it that I had to handle today, which was the safe area also changed. So I had to like remodify all the type layout to like, compensate for this extra bit of safe area that we didn't know about. So that's kind of the big surprise. The nice thing is we're billing for it. So, and the client's fine with that because they understood like it's a change of the original contract. It's not part of the original brief. And they're pretty cool about that. So, but still it's, it's one of those things of like, just things like those things eat away at the other time for the personal projects. So, but because it's a non-negotiable, I just went straight to my tight pencils today and stuff after that. But that was a bit of a curveball, and I have to do it. But it's a good problem. Like I think there's a lot of people who like paying clients. So I'm like, I don't want to complain too much about getting a paying client for doing design or illustration, but yeah.
And it's and I don't know that it's complaining really, but like, it's kind of like the same thing with the concert. It's an interesting challenge that I don't think a lot of people outside of this lifestyle really understand. Like, you're going and doing something fun and you're combating like feeling guilty or feeling like you're wanting to be somewhere else when that's actually what you do want to do, but it's also at the sacrifice of the other thing that you do want to do.
Yeah.
At least temporarily. And so it is a bit of a challenge to, step away, even if it's doing like a vacation or a concert or a movie, or it's like, oh, it was awesome. Also, I lost a night of productivity, and it's hard to be present and enjoy things. It's just a weird balance.
Yeah. And I think it's a byproduct of building positive habits. Cause like, even with the tendonitis thing or whatever, it's like the first thing that made me really bummed about it wasn't like, oh, now I'm gonna have trouble walking or anything like that. It was like, crap, now I can't do my workout that like I've just built this habit and now I'm like, it's gonna derail that whole thing. That's been the thing that's bugged me the most about that, was that part of it. But it's and it's similar, like Friday I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna be doing that, so where am I going to pull from my time bank to make that happen? Yeah. It is an interesting challenge, but it's a good problem to have, So, okay, well, let's talk about our goals or whatever for the next check.
Yeah. So I'm looking at doing this. So I had, I remember this from a while ago. I did the animatic for it, and I have like a storyboard that's a little bit larger than just what you're seeing here. And I think I'm mainly trying to like up my Instagram game. And so I think I'm going to start doing just some square animations for that format.
Smart.
For a little bit. And so basically I'm just going to illustrate this and animate it. What happens is, what you're seeing is like the mouth opens, you see the skeleton, and then the skeleton mouth opens, and then you see what he ate for lunch, and then, which is like this little insect, and then that insect splats against the wall and drips into my logo. So I'd like to get it done in less than a week. That's kind of my goal. So we'll see if I can get a little bit faster than the last one, which just took me too long because I was doing it at the same time as client work.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because this one does seem like it'll require a little less articulation.
Right. It's more masking and less movement.
Yeah, and less like squash and stretch, maybe a little bit of wobble, but I think that's possible. Knowing, like, if you weren't so quick with it, I would be like, that's insane. But the fact that you got I was really impressed that you got I actually honestly thought we'd do this check and you'd be like, I didn't really finish the rat, just because that was actually pretty ambitious. And the fact that you managed to get that done makes me think, yeah, you can get this done easy.
Yeah, I've learned I've taught myself some shortcuts that probably look more impressive than they are from a time standpoint. So, which is, I mean, that's the name of the game, is you try to figure out how to make things look really good and not take you as much time. So,
yeah.
So, how about you? What are your plans?
Kayla just mentioned my After Effects icon is a question mark right now, so all of my animations are on pause till I stop making memes about this and learn how to fix it. If you're talking about just the icon on your dock being a question mark, I had that issue today with the AI, and it might just be that it upgraded to 2020, so you might have to just remove that shortcut from your dock, and then go into your applications and remake the shortcut, because I had that issue, particularly, especially if you're on Apple. Might have happened if you just upgraded to Catalina. So that would just be a thought. But
also, Adobe Max is this week, and they actually on the first day of Max released the update that you're talking about. And so if it coincided with like in the last 3 days, it definitely is that. And so if you go if on a Mac, if you press Command Spacebar, then you can just start typing the name of the program and it'll search it for you. On a P, if you just tap the window key, you can start typing, it'll search it for you. And then once you open that on both PC and Mac, it'll put that in your taskbar, and you can right click on it and tell it to stay there.
Yeah, and there'll be like a brief moment when you open it where it says it's verifying your Apple ID or whatever, but that should solve your issue. I had that issue both at work and at home. So, cool. Let's see. Anything else? I think. Oh yeah.
Did you mention plans and I missed it?
I didn't. I was trying to bypass that. No. I'd like to have the first panel inked at least by Monday, if not the whole page, but definitely the first panel. Just because that crowd took a while on both the rough pencils and the tight pencils. I'm imagining it might just be the first, but we'll see. And then also, hope to enjoy seeing Built to Spill. So
yeah,
that should be pretty fun.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I haven't been to a live concert in a long time.
Yeah, I only occasionally go, and it's usually the guy I'm in a band with who drags me to them, which is a good thing. I'm thankful for it because it's fun, and Troubadour is always a good venue. So
yeah, whenever everybody comes to Idaho, tickets are always like $60 because there's just not that many people up here, and so it's almost like I don't know.
Yeah, no. Here's the downside of the Troubadour is I'm finally at that age where I don't want to stand during a concert,
right?
And you have to stand at the Troubadour, so I'm like, well, my back's not gonna be feeling too great.
Yeah.
Glad I've been keeping up with my workout because it's going to pay off that day.
Go spend a couple bucks on some gel insoles or something.
It's good thinking.
Yeah. You want to hit a topic for a couple minutes, or?
Sure. Anything come to mind?
No, not really. I mean, it's been interesting. I've been talking to. I've been addressing some things that have come up in class a few times, and some of those might be interesting, but they're probably longer topics. So I can run down just a couple of them. You can see which ones. So one is how to delegate, and like actually how to delegate an assignment, so that it's clear on that it's been delegated, that there is an expectation of like how to submit it and report it. That's one. I've been going over client negotiation and how to understand how to position yourself in that negotiation in a position of equality rather than a subjective position, and how to run a meeting has come up several times, especially creative meetings. And so like there's different types of meetings, but I've been doing some training with a group of students on how to do that. Yeah, so those are the three that kind of come to mind.
We could touch on delegation for about 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So the thing that I've come to understand with delegation is you haven't delegated something unless you've done 3 very specific things. And without those 3 things, you will feel like you've delegated something. And people in the room might feel like there has been an assignment given, but very seldom do people understand that they've been given that assignment, or that it's more than a suggestion. And so one is, even if it's a team effort, there needs to be a single person that's ultimately responsible to make sure that happens and make sure it gets submitted correctly. So I say that the number one is a name. You have to say, even if there's 3 people working on it, one of those people is going to be ultimately responsible and on the hook. The second one is that you say when, very specifically when you want that thing to be done. And so there's a date and time on that. And then the third thing is very specifically how, like basically metrics for success, like how it is to be submitted correctly. And so for example, if I was running a meeting and Josh is one of the people on my team, I might say, Josh, I need you to get X done by Tuesday at 5 p.m. And I need it in my inbox, submitted in my inbox in a zipped folder as an AI file. And then Josh would probably come back and ask a series of clarifying questions to make sure that he's going to do that correctly. But that would be an actual delegation. And then the follow-up to that is, sometime before that deadline, I would drop by and ask Josh how it's going, not in a threatening way or anything, but just say, hey, how is that? Looking forward to seeing it by tomorrow at 5, or earlier if possible. Let me know. Do you need anything? Is everything going all right? Because then there's that expectation of follow-up of like, oh, that wasn't like a random isolated incident. There's like an expectation that I've got to turn that in. That's those 3 things. Without one of those, it's a wish and a hope and a suggestion at best.
I agree. In art direction, I think my first 3 months or something, I made the first time manager mistake of just kind of assuming that when you ask someone to do something, they would do it.
Right.
First off, never ask for volunteers, just delegate. And you can, if you want to be more kind of open about it, you can always open it up to, if any of these roles sound more interesting to any of you, feel free to talk to me and I might be able to shift it around. But for now, this is who is on it. So that way you open it up for if Bob is really passionate about, one element of it, he can come up and be like, I really wanted to do this thing. And then usually you'll have an idea of the personalities that you're dealing with. So if that person's coming to you to really just kind of try to lighten their own load, or if they're coming to you because of a sincere interest. The most important thing that you mentioned there is giving a deadline and a time. Because a request without a deadline means it just won't happen.
It means I can spend an indefinite amount of time thinking about it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've been thinking about that. I've been really trying to spend some time thinking about that assignment you gave me.
Yeah, and in a creative department where the majority, basically almost all creative work is all rush. So if you're in an environment of all rush and you're trying to work on a big project without a deadline, it literally won't make headway because you've made no milestones, you've made no due dates, and no due dates means no one's going to do it. Even your best employees or your best team member, it's just not going to happen. So yeah, being really clear about a date and a time. What you mentioned about when you say it, the person will have a lot of follow-ups. That's a really good thing too, because if you're asking for a turnaround and a date and a time that's impractical or impossible, they will then respond with that's impractical and impossible. And then you can get into a discussion as to why. And once again, I'm part of delegation when you're having that kind of discussion is when there's excuses for why it can't, you offer to remove barriers. So you say, well, what can I take out? What can I do to kind of facilitate that happening by that date? And so you're kind of allowing the conversation to continue with the responsibility still resting on the person who it's been delegated to. I agree. If you're dealing with a bigger team and it's a project like if it's being delegated to like one person, it's a pretty simple project. That person should very well know who's responsible for it. If it doesn't. But when you're dealing with a group, yeah, definitely having a certain person who's your point person who's going to answer for it if it doesn't happen will motivate them, because that also means they're going to get credit for it if it does happen.
Yep.
And so that's super important.
And the whole a committee cannot be held accountable. Like a group of people can't be held accountable. An individual can be held accountable, but as soon as you say, "Why didn't you all get that done?" then everybody can kind of just, "Oh yeah, well, I don't know." It's like, I don't know who to pin that on, right? Yeah. Not that I'm looking to like blame anybody, but like I am looking to problem solve and avoid that situation in the future. But if I'm like, Jack, I gave you an assignment. You had some resources. Some of those resources were other human beings, but like ultimately I gave you an assignment. Why didn't that get that done? And then they can tell you like, "Oh, well, Jill over here, had this problem, or I dropped the ball, or, whatever." And, our computer.
And honestly, that'll show you the character of that person for a lead too, because if the instant they get that, they go, "Oh, well, so-and-so and this," right. Like, you're like, you might want to question putting that person in a lead position.
Yeah.
But if they actually own up and go, some things came up, I had issues with these people. At the end of the day, it's me.
Right.
At the end of the day, I didn't get it done.
And a good potential for a lead in that situation would come to you and say, "I'm trying to get that done. Trying to get this done. I know that it's due, in 2 days. I'm really struggling to get, so and so to help, even though they've been put on the team. Do you have any suggestions?"
Yep.
Because then it's not like a hope. They're like, "Oh, I've identified a problem that isn't a problem yet, but will be a problem in the future. And I'm going to proactively do something to try to do that." And the best ones, they come to you and they say, "Just so you know, I had this issue with this person. I did these things, and either it's fine now, or that didn't work and I'm out of ideas. Do you have any suggestions?" Like, I've already taken some action and tried to get some stuff done. That can be really good too. But yeah, that's so anyway, I just feel like as I watch these students in multiple situations. I'm part of a student-run ad agency, and so I watch the student account executives run these meetings and give these assignments, and the student art directors do that. I'm also part of the capstone in the visual class, and I'm watching. This is the 4th semester where we've run these really significant projects where there's 5 to 12 students involved on each team, which is a big group, to do something like that. And it's interesting that they continue to have like the same problems over and over in those situations. And I've started to kind of process and encapsulate those things, because I remember having those problems, and most people I know have those problems. I just don't think certain things are like a natural state for human beings. And I think like understanding and learning like how to navigate those situations can help people in their career. So this is a little self-serving, because talking through this is really helpful, because I actually think I don't think a book will come out of it, but like at least like a pamphlet, or a series of training animations or something along the lines of like, here's how to solve the most commonly occurring problems in creative project management.
I love it. I think that would be great too, because a lot of it you have to learn the hard way. And then one thing to be aware of too, because people are usually leery of kind of exerting authority, or they're all too happy to exert authority. You don't usually have a nice in between.
Yeah.
And so, but one of the things to kind of keep in mind, if you're of the kind of ilk that will look at like a scenario and you'll be like, well, I want people to have freedom. I want them to have individuality. I want them to be able to kind of pick their own thing. I want teams that kind of lead themselves, not, are not led by a figurehead. You still have to remember that even like even the most like social of politicians who are all about like kind of people having ideas, they come to the masses with ideas first. So there's options of ideas presented. If you are a leader and you just walk into a group of people and you go, there's a bunch of problems, figure it out, guys, like that's not going to go over well. So offering options is not like a forceful, terrible thing. That's actually a freeing thing for a group of people. And similarly, like delegating, while it might seem uncomfortable at first to kind of put responsibility on like your power player in your group, that's like the best thing you could do for that person, because it's clarity of role, and teams are at their best and happy. There's a bunch of research behind it. Teams are at their best and happiest when they have clear, concise ideas of their deadlines, their expectations, and their goals. And so if you've laid out, here's my expectation, here's the goal, here's the deadline, you just negated like 80% of what causes stress in a team environment.
And I would add to that situation, like faith and hope, like the belief that they can do it.
Yes.
And that they understand that you believe that they have the ability to accomplish it. And that's really important, because as soon as they get the feeling that like, oh man, I just don't think I can do this, and then they see that you're like, I don't know if you can do this, they'll give up and they'll lose their job. Like they will tank themselves, even if they had the ability. They'll tank themselves. Mood management is one of the most important things on like delegation and teams. Is like, it can be hard, it can be rough, it can be fast. The workload can be heavy, but if there's no hope, none of the other stuff matters. But if there is hope, you can get a lot of stuff done.
Yeah, and that's another thing, is you kind of have to remember, like when you delegate out, if you just stay absent from the process and you're not being a cheerleader throughout the whole thing, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting those deadlines hit, no matter how clear you've been.
Right.
Another thing to keep in mind on the kind of darker side of it is, if that deadline doesn't get met, there have to actually be repercussions.
Yeah.
And so there's that too, where it's like there needs to be a reward if people do well, and there definitely needs to be some kind of disincentivizing thing if they don't hit the deadline.
The other day, along those lines, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, with like practicality in mind. So like, once again, if 50 curveballs came that you saw,
right,
and it was impossible for them to do, then obviously you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. But if they literally blew it and didn't hit the deadline for whatever reason, it needs to be made known pretty clearly that's not acceptable. And usually the only way to make that known is some kind of negative consequence.
Yeah. And sometimes that negative consequence can just be you don't do what comes naturally to a lot of us, which is to like try to get rid of the awkwardness of that situation. Say, oh, it's okay, it's no problem.
Yeah.
Like I do that automatically. When somebody's like, oh yeah, I didn't get, oh, it's all right. The other day I was talking to a student who's running a team, and she was saying, I'm having some trouble getting these guys to do stuff. And I said, well, one of the things is that when they miss something, you need to ask them, you need to let them know, like, that's disappointing. Like, I expected that to get done, and we needed that. And now here are the people that now can't do their part of it because you didn't get that done.
Yeah.
And then don't say anything and just let them sit in the awkwardness of having their peers know that they dropped the ball.
Yeah. And there's actually a really good feedback tool. That's funny. This is opening up a lot of stuff I read about and stuff, because it's pretty much like what we do all day.
Right.
So I'm sure for both of us, it's like, ooh, we get to, but there's also this feedback tool that I like, which is you kind of state the issue. So you state like what the bad thing was, like the deadline was missed. you then clarify what the consequence of that choice was. So like if we missed the deadline, therefore now our, the things behind, now we've lost such and such income or whatever.
Right.
And then a good, valuable feedback loop to bring it back to a positive without saying it's okay is to kind of loop it around to, had you, like Cory was talking about before, like had you checked in with me midway through the process and told me that you were having issues with this employee, and getting them to do it, and we had worked together to kind of overcome that and get them on board and get that work in on time, then we would have hit the deadline and therefore made this profit or had this positive consequence. However, because that didn't happen, now we're here. So in the future, do this, right? So you're giving them a learning experience.
Right.
That's one way to do it. But sometimes when the consequences are dire, there's not even really necessarily a need to just do that loop. Sometimes it's okay to just be like, well, I'm very disappointed. And now we're in, the deep end. So, yeah.
And oftentimes asking them to come up with a solution of how to figure that out. So, so this is where we are right now. What are we going to do? What are you going to do about it? What do you need to get this done? What's going to happen? Because this is where we are. These series of interdependencies are at stake. So what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes if people are not granted that authority, that power to be able to solve that problem, they'll just be like, well, I didn't get it done, and you're the boss, and so this is your problem now. And they pass it back to you, and it's like, no, you were assigned this thing. It's still your issue,
Yeah.
And and it's interesting because sometimes they will come up with good solutions for like how to get that done, or how to mitigate that problem, or soften the blow, or an alternate solution that maybe didn't come to light until this point. The other way, which I don't like, but I did this week, is I was sitting in a meeting, and this student art director, and student organizations are difficult because the hierarchy is, I don't want to say it's pretend, because it's not. It is real, but it's not as real as it is in industry, right? I mean, you're
voluntary kind of thing. Yeah.
Your peers, and you take different classes, and the hierarchy switches around a lot or whatever. And so it's difficult when like there's like a 39-year-old in the room and then everybody else is 20, but some of those 20-year-olds are in charge of some of those other 20-year-olds. And so I was watching this art director, and she was very soft-spoken and kind of going through, and she said, so-and-so, did you, how is this coming? And he said, oh, I'm sorry, I totally forgot about that, and then she said, okay. And he said, yeah, I apologize. I just didn't get that done. And then there were like 3 people in the meeting that were just like talking about nothing, like over her, like the meeting was totally out of control. And then she moved on to the next agenda item, like, hey, okay, so-and-so, did you get this done? And I just interrupted, and I said, now hold on just a second. Your art director is talking right now, and the 3 of you are not paying attention and being exceptionally rude, and you just blew a deadline and acted like it wasn't a big deal. I'm just going to let you know that the next person that does either of those things is immediately fired. Like, you will respect her because she is in charge, and I have hired her to be in charge because she's better at this than you are, and you'll get it done, or I will find any number of other students to take your place. All of you are replaceable easily. And then lo and behold, over the next 72 hours, I see all kinds of productivity and all kinds and whatever. And like the fine line that you have to walk with that is that has to be a very rare and isolated occurrence.
Yeah.
And you have to follow through with it if somebody drops the ball.
Oh yeah. And another thing with that too is hopefully it doesn't even get to that point, because like there's a couple tricks to just even like the room thing. If the room's talking, wait them out, man. Like if you try to talk over a talking room, you've lost all authority within that second. And it's a joke among teachers when you're at like a teaching conference and somebody comes up to talk about teaching and they're like, excuse me, can everybody be quiet, please? You're like, really? You're a teacher? Like, because what you notice with like old school teachers is they'll just stand there and they'll just give you.
They might say this. They might say, "I will wait until you finish talking."
Yeah, but I mean, what happens is you'll notice everybody starts ebbing down, and there's like one last person who's like, "Oh boy,"
yeah.
You know, and that pretty much quiets it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it is tough. It's tough with like students. It's tough with scenarios like that. Yeah, but delegation, super important. And if you can't do it, you're going to have trouble leading, because that's 90% of 90% of it is delegating.
And I do want to say, I know that I have
for years of being terrible at it.
Yeah. And I know I have a speaking style that sounds very definitive. And I've been accused of being a know-it-all or whatever, because I declare things a lot more than I suggest things. But if you do those three things, you can do it in almost any type of style. And so if you're a little bit more laid back, if you're a little bit more low key or whatever, that's totally fine. Like, you don't have to be like a hard nosed, like, come in and like boss it and tell everybody what to do. Like, as long as you have a name, a date and time, and how to submit it correctly, and
a repercussion if it doesn't get there. That's where it gets like, no matter how soft spoken you are, you need real repercussions.
Yeah.
And so like with like in my role, it's like, as an art director, I don't get loud. I don't cuss people out. I don't threaten people. I just give repercussions. And so usually the way that works is I'll delegate something to somebody, they'll blow it, and there's some pretty severe repercussions, and they never blow it again, because they realize like, oh, okay, this person's delegating. It's not like a request. That's a directive. And actually, that's a good little tip too, is you can casually delegate. And if you get the sense this person kind of feels like, oh, okay, this is like a suggestion, you can go, oh, by the way, that's not a suggestion. That's a directive.
Yeah.
That's clear, because if there's a directive and then it's not followed, that's insubordinate. And that's a lot easier to discuss, because you could say, I gave a directive. I was clear about it. I said it was a directive. And you haven't followed the directive.
Yeah. Clarity is key. I was in almost everything being clear, and oftentimes just stating, like, I do this as a teacher. I don't know if it's good or bad, but it seems to work really well, where I just tell them what I'm doing. I'm just like, the reason I am doing this is because of X. I want you guys to feel this way and think these things. And the reason I did that last week is because of X. And if I do that in this sequence, then you guys learn these things in this sequence. And they're always like, oh, wow. I'm like, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm just literally telling you that if you know this and do this and struggle with this. And I had some people come to me recently and say, man, we know some people in one of your classes, and she is really working hard in that class. And the interesting thing is, she told us, well, he told me it was going to be really hard, and it is really hard. And so she's like super motivated, even though she's struggling, because you told her she was going to struggle. And it's just like, clear communication and stating what's really going to happen is super powerful. Like, this is a directive. You are going to struggle with this. This is hard. I recognize this. I know that you can get it done. It will be difficult, or whatever. Like, just acknowledging reality can often just be super powerful. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, and I think being straightforward with people is one of the big tricks with gaining respect as a leader too. Because if you think about it, like, if somebody just gives bland compliments all the time and never gives criticism or honest feedback, and is, like, we all know that, like, those types of people, like, where you could have like chocolate all over your face, and like, because you were eating and it just ended up, and you'll be like, how do I look? And they'll be like, oh, great. You look great. Because we all know people who are like that far of people pleasers.
Right.
And that's like, nobody's going to respect that. Cause like a lot of people want to know, like, no, you got some stuff on your face. Like you should.
Yeah. 3 weeks ago, I made it through 3 hours of classes with my fly down. And no one said anything. That means that there was over 50 people that watched me for a while, and no one was like, hey, dude, I left, and then somebody else at lunch was like, oh, your fly's down. And I was like, oh, I really wish somebody would have said something.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
On that note.
It's good. That's a good topic. We definitely should return to that one too, because it's something I'm still refining too, because I don't think there's a perfect way, but I agree with your 3 steps. I think those are definitely truths.
Yeah, and there's probably more to it and nuance, but I have noticed that if one of those 3 things is missing, it's a wish. It's not a delegation. So
yeah. There's the others. Oh man, yeah. Okay, we have to continue this because I was realizing I've also seen young people in lead positions really pull their weight too much to delegate, and that has an equally disastrous result.
Yeah,
it's like equivalent to, and I made this mistake as a manager my first year. I was talking to a young designer on staff. It was like my first week as an art director. And they were kind of argumentative about the change I was asking for. And I just said, I'm the art director. You're the designer. Make the change.
Right.
And I had trouble with that designer for about 1.5 years after that because I had lost all respect.
Yeah.
Because what I realized is the second you do that, it's like with your kid, every once in a while you do have to pull that card. But with your kid, the second you have to go, I'm the parent, you're the kid, do the thing, you've lost your kid's respect. And what's weird is if you're generating a lot of respect, you don't have to pull that card a lot because they know you're the parent. They know and here's the thing: if they know you're the parent because they fear and respect you, and also admire you, right? But there is fear there where it's like, if I don't do this thing, there will be a repercussion. Like I'll lose a toy or whatever it is, It's very similar. Anyhow, I'm fascinated by that as a topic, so we'll have to touch on that again because it's
and it's also when we bring it up again, it's interesting, not just in an art director art room situation. It's also with collaborators. It's also with clients. Like you and I have worked on stuff, and it's not like either of us is in charge, but there needs to be clearly communicated things like, I'm expecting you to do X by this time.
Yeah. And it's weird, if when we collaborated, we didn't have that, neither of us would get anything done.
Right.
And we'd both be like, well, I'll do that like next week. It'll come sometime.
Or worse, like we spend a lot of time being very productive on stuff that doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Because we're, one of us doesn't want to tell the other one what to do. It's like, we're not telling each other what to do. We're just clearly communicating the needs of the project. That's way different than being like, I'm in charge. I am the decider,
It's essential, like, man.
Yeah. And I mean, we did an animation together and it's not like, I mean, technically you were the boss of that, but at times I had to say, this is how I need these files. Let me explain to you how I need you to prep this stuff. And if you can get that to me by this point in time, that's when I'll need it, and it's not like I was giving you an assignment, but that clear communication did delegate a task in a way that allowed the project to continue.
Yeah. And if you don't delegate the task, then you don't open up that conversation of like, well, like tomorrow may not work, but I can do this time. Or like if I get these things, then I could hit tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like it becomes a collaboration at that point. Yeah. But it's the same philosophy as like working on personal projects. A personal project that you're doing nothing to advance with no deadlines, with no self deadlines for yourself is a pipe dream. Yep. A collaboration with no delegation or deadlines, that's another pipe dream. It's like, it's a fantasy collaboration. You're not actually collaborating.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing about the 48-hour art check is like, neither of us are assigning anyone else but ourselves what we're going to do. But I'm actually saying, like, these are the deliverables. This is how I'm going to do it. This is by when I'm going to do it. And I'm the person that's going to do it. Like I'm delegating that task to myself, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Until we started talking about this, it hadn't occurred to me that this is not just delegation. This is just how anything gets done. There's just no other way to do it.
If we hadn't set a time and specific days of the week that we do this, it wouldn't happen.
Right.
It wouldn't happen.
Oh, and a good example of that is there's a comic book professional who has agreed to be on my show, and wants to be on my show, and because I'm not in charge of this individual, I invite and then I wait, and then he's doing it. Let's do it by this point in time, and then some stuff happens, and it may happen eventually, but it has been about 6 months. And so that's just kind of the name of the content game. But yeah, I mean, there's no way I'm going to be like, all right, listen, you're going to do this on this day or else, because it's like, he's whatever. But it is interesting that when there isn't deadlines, there aren't consequences. It just gets backburnered. There are other things. Like, I wish education was different than it was. I wish that you didn't need grades. I wish that, whatever. And I think the students wish that too. But because the whole system is based on grades, if I were to just eliminate all the points in my class and say, these are the things that you need to do to become the type of person that you need to become and gain the abilities you need to gain, almost no one would do them because their other classes have requirements and consequences.
Yeah. And that is one thing, is like the grade thing. I'm not a fan of grades either, but they do offer some kind of incentive, like a carrot stick. And it's like, weirdly enough, people respond to carrots and sticks. Yeah. And, I wish it weren't like that, but it is like that. So,
yeah. So
cool. Great topic, man. I didn't go that one, but
so, okay. Well, let's wrap this up. If you want to go see some of Josh's stuff, then go to joshuakemble.com. By the way,
and if you don't buy it tomorrow at 5, there will be severe consequences. That's a delegation from Cory. Go check it out.
You have an assignment, and I would like you to check back on our next art check to say that you've been to that website. And as proof of that, tell me 2 things that you learned. But Josh is currently about to start inking the final page of a 5-year project. All of the previous pages are now up and available. Yes? Question mark. So you can go read everything except this final page for free on his website or on the mobile app that's, I'm sure, also linked on the website. And if you want to look at my stuff, you can go to corykerr.com. But what I would really like you to do is I would like you to go to Instagram and go leave a comment on the animation that I did, because I need the Instagram algorithm to know that people care about my stuff so that it shows my stuff to more people. That's the most useful thing that everybody could do. So you guys are awesome, and we will see you in a couple days. Go get something done.